Hello everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick video critique here because I've got some updates on the Facebook group, and I thought it would be good to just get everyone together and talk about all three of these projects at once. So the first things first, I want to just go through and answer Malik's questions or talk about your comments here. So Malik, and it's totally cool they use the AI standard shader with a little bit of specularity. And yes, as far as the geo goes, that's totally my fault. I'm the one that built that. So if anything's floating, it's totally on me. Just go ahead and ground it though. I know I was particular in the lecture about not adjusting any of the materials or geometry. It's because I wanted to just start with what you could do with pushing the lights. But once you get kind of a hang of it, go ahead and make some minor tweaks to allow your lighting and the material to work together a little bit. In terms of exposure versus intensity, the biggest thing to know about it is just they're basically doing the exact same thing. They're just doing it two different ways. So intensity is a straight up multiplier of the value, and it's actually a multiplier of the color of the light. So if the light is 111 and your intensity is 3, then the color of the light is now 333. Exposure is doing the same thing, but it's doing it different mathematically. It's actually doing it based on camera exposure points. So it's either, the base exposure, double the exposure, triple the exposure. It's just handling the calculation slightly differently. It's all in, the exposure was meant for like match to live action stuff when you're talking about opening up an exposure or closing down an f-stop. And that's where that comes in. It's all about how you like to work. It's just the exposure can't be 0 is the only thing, because that just eliminates everything. So as long as the exposure is 1, you can go crazy with the intensity or you can go crazy with the exposure. It's total personal preference to get you to the final product. So hopefully that helps. I think that was the only one. And in creating more interest in your background here, so let me just go to your original image. So with these, like something like creating more interest in the background, it could be adding more light. It could be adding a barn door to your light to flap off some shadow area. It could be adding a gobo to the light to create some different shapes back there. It could be like a very general noise to just create some like unspoken value differences between light and dark. Or it could be just like the angle of the light, like the cone angle only hits it at a slashing angle. You could really play around with it. There's a few different ways to get variation on the background with just the light. Be careful with it, and it was just in total, like a total small thing, but just in the way that you said it, like just be careful with the idea of just like, oh, I'll just add light. And that's because that's how you can very easily, it can get out of control with the number of lights you add to a scene. So I'll jump down here to Calabaza. Let's go right down here at the bottom. Okay. So very cool. Like the new shirt material. I like that we're reading the apple. It gets a little bit dark over here, so we might have to hit it with a little bit of rim light. And same thing on his hand as it moves out of the the key light into the shadow over here, just to get a little bit more of a read on it. And then in terms of like just focusing on the character right now, eyebrows are a little better. They could go a little bit brighter. We get more of a distinction between the iris and pupil here. And then I would like to see like the shirts, like it's nice how it's getting some speck or like a little bit of rim here. It'd be nice to get some specular hit here, or just a feeling of its outline around the outside. I know that we're getting a little bit more value back here. It still feels very dark and heavy. I think it can come up even more, because like there'll just be more light rattling around back in that region there. And then those are probably the biggest things right now. And then let's see, the knife is so hard because it's like perpendicular to the camera, right? So it's like we're not seeing the blade, but we need to see the blade, because right now it just doesn't, like that doesn't look like a knife. It looks like a white line. So we need to figure out a way to get the knife to read as a knife. You could perhaps like put a little glinty flingy thing on it. You could do that, like a little bit of a lens flare on the comp, but I would see, just see if we can get some diffuse value on there. In terms of, yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. And then just getting some more value back here. Just like maybe adding a little bit of a fill light to the overall scene, and just see if we can't get a little bit in there. yeah, that's the biggest one there. And then we've got Sook Lim's image. So actually, let me hop over to Photoshop here because I have this open here. So this is a great start. I took a look at your reference. Thank you for providing that. That's really, really big. So there's some differences and distinctions within them. And so I'm not quite sure, because like the first thing I noticed is the sky, right? Like you've got, the sky is very visible. It's very similar to this reference, but dissimilar from the other two. And I would think, me personally, I would push it more towards this level of brightness as opposed to something like this, just because it feels a little bit even. So if I take down the saturation and just make it about value, like I would like these values feel pretty similar to me back here. So it'd be nice to push that a little bit stronger. In terms of some other things, I think this is looking really great. It's feeling overall a little bit matte. Like we're not getting a lot of specular highlights and things, especially like the plants and these metallic objects. It's just feeling like a lot of diffuse value. So I would see what I can do about increasing the specular value of the light, because it doesn't feel like it's a material thing if it's happening kind of uniformly across the entire scene. So just see what you can do about that. Some other things you want to be aware of with this set, and these are pretty common with this one. It's just the way it goes. Just watch out and try and get some distinction between this wall 1 and wall 2 over here, just because they end up, for whatever reason, they end up being pretty similar in value. And so just it really helps create like sections of space where now this is section 1, this little area is section 2, and this area is section 3. It really helps get some more depth. And then in terms of we've got this, there looks like to be a little bit of a wash back here towards the back of the scene. Two things about it. One, I'm not seeing it up near the top of the screen. Ooh, not there. I'm not seeing it up here as much as I am down below here. And what I would think is that it kind of happens uniformly back there, because it's kind of happening. It's a little bit of a lens, like it happens a little bit in the lens effect, and there's just not enough. It basically is just looking like this area feels desaturated, as opposed to it being washed out. Like this area under this window feels more contrasty than this area, and it just feels a little washed out. So I would make it feel a little bit more uniform and make it feel a little bit more like it's affecting everything back there. A little bit of lens flare, it looks like up here. That's cool. And then I would see what you can do, because again, this is something that's pretty common about getting some reflection in this window. Feels a little bit dead. And then watch out for these plants. They're gonna want to get very matte too. So just getting some specular bounces in there. And then from there, I mean, it's looking pretty good though. Like this has got a pretty good feel to it. Some other things that you can add, like this one has some really good, like these bright sun hit areas are like past the point of white, and same thing here, and even the same thing here. They're getting really, really bright, where the brightest area here really doesn't do it. Like again, if I look at the levels, I think I could push. I mean, that's a little bit extreme, but just don't be afraid to really make it feel warm and bright and sunny, and allow some areas to get blown out, if that's the look that you're going for. Because that's actually something that I feel is very photoreal. If you just allow for some mistakes and things to fall outside of the perfect 0 to 1 range in the final image, I think that'll make something look a little more photorealistic. So take a look. If you all have any questions about this video, feel free to ask. But I think you all are off to a really good start. And yeah, so just window reflection, spec in the leaves, spec overall, get distinction between these walls and this alleyway. Perhaps consider brightening up the sky so it's nice and blown out and can add like a really neat little bloom effect back there. And also, if you do that, you can glow it up in post-production in the comp, and that'll allow the dark values of this foreground to step forward a little bit and create more depth spatially overall. So yeah, if y'all have any questions, let me know. And in the meantime, happy lighting.